good. Thank you, Scott. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee of Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. The first item on the agenda is public appearances, non-agenda items. We have Mr. David Haight that would like to speak. David? And David, you do have 3 minutes.
Got it. I wrote it down, but give me the hook.
Okay, very good.
So I want to apologize for getting a little testy at the end last night. It's 3 mayors, 5 directors of public works. I've been outside in 100-year storms 4 times in the last 6 years with my head in storm sewers. That's a reason, but not an excuse, and you have my apology. So why does the stormwater utility control of budgeting matter? Well, environmental conservation and protection constitute the sacrifice of our own pleasure, our own utility today for the benefit of others in the future. It's an altruistic act, and as humans, we're not really good at that. And the sacrifices aren't always obvious. So it could be less density, so we have a trade-off between things. It could be that there are things that your constituents that you feel your constituents need that you can't give to them because the stormwater utility has a different prioritization scheme than you do. And the governance structure of the stormwater utility, looking back, is a bit of a genius, right? Knowing that there's always going to be pressure from developers and that the alders always want to do things for their constituents, quite validly, that the writers removed that temptation. So one of the key things about ethical enforcement is that you want to remove yourself from temptation. That's kind of the first rule. And so by giving it to the Board of Public Works, acting as the utility board of governance with the charter of delivering stormwater management services, it's a utility. The tasks are required to control stormwater runoff, protect health, safety, and welfare of the public, and comply with state and federal regulations. So now there's an independent authoritative body that's their charter. They can say, no, the law, we've all agreed, compact-wise, across the United States, the Clean Water Act is the law. We agree to that. The stormwater utility is that body. And the capital budgeting is a reflection of what that does. And that's really why this is an important issue. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. All right. Moving forward, I don't believe we have anyone else that would like to speak this evening. No one on Zoom, correct, Scott? Thank you. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. And I'll find my place here. And that is item 3, presentations by department heads. And we will turn to the outline of document and process. I'll turn the floor over to Misty Dodge, our Director of Finance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to talk necessarily about the priorities that's included in the CIP. I will obviously leave that to the mayor for her presentation. I'm going to talk real quickly about kind of the logistics, how to find the document, how to interpret the document, where to find information. And then at the end of all the presentations tonight, I'll talk about next steps, basically following the schedule that you approved previously. So the CIP, Mayor's proposed CIP, is available out on the city's website. Under the Finance Department page, there's a separate section for Capital Improvement Plan, because this is a plan. It is not a budget, doesn't appropriate money. It's just a plan, but it's an important plan. Financial management and planning long-term is an important part of what you guys do. So it's available through there. There's also, if you go to the finance packet for tonight, there's a link out to that document there as well. So that's the easiest way to find it. Once you have the PDF open, I find the bookmarks to be the easiest way to maneuver within the document. We start with some summary information, and then each one of the projects are grouped by department, and then at the end we have some appendix information. So I find these bookmarks to be the easiest way to kind of navigate depending on what you're looking at. Tonight's presentations, though, we should roll right through the document one by one, and then I will have it up on the screen as well. So if you'd like to just sit back and follow along on the screen, that should work out well, too. Many of your department heads are here by Zoom because we find that works pretty well from a thing. instructed them that if there's no changes to the project from the last time you guys adopted the CIP, to really just mention that it exists and then that there's no changes and move on, and really focus on anything that was changed from the last one or any new projects. So you'll hear from your department heads in those areas in particular. Now, when you're looking at the document, the best place to start would be the letter from the mayor, which she, again, will go through in a little bit. It talks a lot about kind of that high-level priorities and process and that in that document. Then there's a lot of different reports available depending on how you want to think about the information. So we've got a summary report by department, we've got a summary report by funding source, we've got detailed reports by each of those, and then there's a summary of changes series of accounts that goes from the last time you guys adopted this CIP as revised through the 2023 budget, through this document, all the different changes that happened with 3 different looks again, looking at total expenditures, looking at just projects that changed the property tax levy, and just projects that changed the borrowing. So it is a very long document. There's a lot of numbers in there, but we try to make it as user-friendly for however it is that you like to look at the information. And if you have any suggestions on how to make that easier, if you want to look at a different way, please reach out, and I'm happy to get you whatever information you would like. Another report I'd like to point out is the operating budget impacts. So when we get to a CIP project, as an example, the top part of the form is the actual capital project, and then at the bottom is a section about how the operating budget would be impacted if this project is approved. And this document here summarizes all of those. So if this is approved as is, which we do have to do the amendment process, but let's say there's no amendments and it's approved as is, we'd have $252,000 that would have to get added to the operating budget as a result of these projects that are in there. And again, those are delineated individually on each project. And so when you're looking at a project, it is all by department. I'm going to use the 6302 project as an example, which is the building systems for City Hall and the Senior Center and the Community Center. So in this description, we like to keep track of how things have changed throughout time if it's an ongoing project. So you can look at the title up here and see that this project has been revised, though I'll point out that this was a manual process on my part, so maybe don't rely on the fact that it says revised there. The bigger thing is to go into this detail, and you can see there's a 2024 update, or in this particular example, it's got all the upcoming projects, and you can see in parentheses behind, it tells you what was changed from the last time. So recognizing that each CIP does stand on its own, but kind of starting from that place where we ended last time will help us be more efficient. When we're doing this is a 10-year plan, but it is important to remember that the first 5 years are really our focus. Those are projects that we're pretty sure are going to happen, maybe a different time, maybe a different funding source, maybe a different dollar amount, but they've been at least vetted through both staff, the public, and councils in the past. So that first 5 years is really what we should be focusing on. But the back 5 years are also there really just as placeholder projects so that we know that these other things are coming and that we aren't surprised by things in that 6th year showing up all of a sudden. So when you're doing your analysis and your review and your prioritization, focus on the front 5 with just kind of an awareness for those back 5 projects. And then at this point, we are just gathering information. So your department heads are here to present to you, but then also answer whatever questions it is that you have. After tonight, we'll go into that prioritization step. But for tonight, it's all about gathering information. So at this point, unless there's logistic or mechanic questions, I think we can turn it over to the mayor.
Very good. Mayor Rada-Frada, you have the floor.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and this is my first capital improvement plan, so you need to bear with me. You can find more information in the letter that I put together, but also I want to give you like a 30,000 overview why we are arriving to this and why are kind of my priority in this CIP. So, as you know, our community has experienced significant growth in recent years, which is certainly a proof of our vibrancy and appeal to our city. However, with this growth comes the pressing challenges of ensuring that our infrastructure, equipment, and buildings keep pace with the needs and demand of our expanding population. As a mayor, it is my responsibility to assess the priority of projects to both the department and the community, evaluate our financial resources and staff capacity, and determine which projects are included in the final draft that we presented today. All new CIP projects included in this proposed plan are from staff input. And I didn't introduce anyone from my own this time. Because of the financial constraint, I didn't feel prudent to introduce some of my ideas or projects. I have a couple of them that I'm planning to introduce next year. As Misty mentioned, this is a plan, it's a framework for the next 10 years, but it's not set in stone. The project that we identified in 24 will be automatically included in the first draft of our 2024 operating budget. So I also want to address an issue that we cannot afford to ignore anymore, and is the tight revenue constraint that limit our ability to fund the essential capital improvements required for our municipality. These constraints are a result of the levy limit imposed on us, and they present us with a unique set of challenges. The key to overcoming these challenges lies in our collective effort, and we must work together to explore alternative avenues for funding or revenue, prioritize our capital needs, and make a strategic decision that maximizes the impact of our limited revenue resources. My theme for this CIP is focused on a sustainable growth and sustainable financing. What does it mean? The city is growing, and also its resources and needs are growing. Consequently, we need to invest in infrastructure and amenity to complement the growth while maintaining a sustainable financing that focus in making financial decisions leading to a more long-term investment based on viable projects. In order to address some of these challenges, we need to focus on innovating funding strategy to supplement our existing revenue stream. The city is currently at a crossroad where we must prioritize sustainable growth and financial decisions that will be viable for long term. Inflation and construction costs have both been much higher than the recent past years. Levy limits restrict property taxes to a level that is not expected to keep up with inflation and construction cost increases going forward. This means that we will need to make difficult decisions and choices in the next couple of years. It is important to acknowledge that years 4 and 5 in this proposed plan do not meet anticipated levy limit due to the additional expenditure in maintaining the new public safety building, among others. This proposed plan does, however, provide some time for the council to consider other funding sources in the levy in the next future. In additional, if additional revenue sources are not identified or approved by 2024, reduction and cut in expenditure and services will be required for future years. So some of the priority that I include in this plan, I am not going to go in detail because they are in the letter, is I want to focus on maintaining existing equipment improvement. The teen center is a priority. I didn't change anything in that. I didn't change the funding, and I didn't change the time frame. I compromise with something that is very dear to my heart. Since the hub phase 1 is now still under construction, and we don't know when it's going to be built, to be honest, I am delaying the hub phase 2. I don't remember, I think it's 2027, but I am doing that compromise to make this plan balance. Police facility. So this building has been on the CIP for many, many years, and it's time to build it. I know that the cost is going to be significant more than we calculated in the past. So what I did, I reinstated $10 million to the funding. So the funding for the police facilities is up $35 million now. And then what is expected to be between 60,000 and 75,000 square feet. And the idea is that we can build this police facility, below this price range, but I think we can build something very nice with $35 million. So I will stay at $35 million. I also, bike lanes in urban and rural areas. I know that this one is not gonna, some people are not gonna be happy with that, but me personally, my perspective that, bike lanes in urban and rural areas, we should fund it with grant or donation. And the bike lanes in the urban area, especially in the healthy neighborhood areas, we should be funding with, levy or debt, or, they have priority. The other thing that I am introducing is an endowment fund and grant donation funding for some park amenity. You will see that there are going to be several requests for additional park amenity in the McGough Park, especially where the pickleball area is, with an additional parking lot, path, or shelter. So my idea is to use, an endowment fund must be established with private fund before we start, building this amenity, in order to help us with the operating cost. So this is something that I hope you can, approve this and agree with me. And the other thing that we are maintaining is the building system replacement funds. We are, every new building or equipment that the city owns, we are establishing a 0.5% of building costs as a replacement fund. Replacement fund is a good financial, planning, but also, these replacement funds also hit the operating budget. So, something that is included in the capital improvement plan, but there are a couple of other projects that we didn't include in the CIP Plus because we are waiting for the approval of the tax incremental district, the new ones, and the expansion of some of them. Then the number 10 is you will see that there is a list of projects there that we are planning to fund with this with TIF in the future. And also we include the bus rapid transit that we mentioned last night. And finally, I look forward to working with you to develop a final plan that will meet the needs of the resident, business owner, and property owners of the city of Fitchburg now and into the future. At the end of the process, will not be a staff plan or the mayor's plan or the council plan. This is going to be a community plan. Every project has value, and it's our task to prioritize based on our community needs, service delivery expectation, and financial constraint. By working together and by leveraging our collective strength, we can build a brighter future for our community that is resilient, sustainable, and poised for continued growth. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your remarks. We will continue on, and next on the list is Administration Chad Brecklin.
If you don't mind, I'll actually wait to allow staff to go. So since I'm here the entirety.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, then we will move on to staff, and the first up is Fact TV, Jeremy Crosby. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. We'll start with 1710 on the facilities. The only update that I have for you in there is that we've moved some of our facility work to our meeting rooms piece, so I'll have you turn your attention to that in a little bit later, but I don't have any other changes in this project. And I'm just looking at Misty to make sure that she gets on me if I miss something on that one. Moving on then to the next project, which is 1711 and the video delivery system. We don't have any changes on there. I would note, though, that we went down to 2 channels last year now, and continue on that path of continuing to save money, continue to get the information out with as many different resources as we can use or delivery systems, but that has allowed us to continue to save money in this account and not be able to have to use it just yet, but when we do get to changing and repairing anything that goes down, we're sitting pretty good in that area. So our plan is working as far as that account goes, but otherwise no changes in that one. 1712, we had no changes in our fleet vehicle replacement fund, so we have our nice Fact TV van, and that's running great, and we hope that it'll continue to run into the future. So no, if you don't have any questions on these, we'll keep going.
I'm actually going to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Darn
So
it.
there were 2 changes on the last 2, but they were more Misty changes, not Jeremy changes. Fact TV previously was its own fund. They had built up a bit of a fund balance, and now we are spending that on capital projects until we need to move them 100% onto the levy. So some of that funding source stuff was changed. That's why they're still listed as revised. But the project itself, what they want to spend, is not changing.
She stole my thunder at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Excuse me, when will he be on 100% on levy? Is there a expected date?
Do you want to answer that if you got it at the end? Okay, so the Fact TV department's operating costs are 100% on the levy.
Right.
Subsidized, of course, with the franchise fees and some other public charges that Fact TV does. But for the bulk of it, they are now on property taxes to fund that department. The capital piece, there was about $160,000, I think, left at the end of 2022, and I'm just applying it in order as these capital projects come down, and I believe we spend it in the next 2 or 3 years, so relatively soon.
So the franchise fees will go away?
Nope, they're just moved to the general fund as well.
Okay, very good.
A question from the newbie.
Go ahead, Alder.
So you've said, it's been said several times, on the levy. Does that mean truly from tax levy, or is that from the general fund, which includes tax levy plus other revenue streams?
More so the second one.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, Alder Gerhart.
Thanks. It says in terms of replacing the vehicle, we'll use a replacement from another department if possible, and then buy one instead. So what if we do end up using just take on a used vehicle from another department? What then happens with the fund balance of the replacement fund?
So the department that the vehicle is currently in, so a lot of these are used squad cars, is kind of how we're hoping to pilot this project going forward. We haven't actually been able to yet pilot it because of delays in getting the backfilled squads. But the CIP project for the squads has an assumed sale revenue in it. So the project that's taking the vehicle will still have to transfer money back into the police department project to kind of make up for that difference.
Okay. Great.
They're kind of selling it to Fact TV rather than selling it to whoever on the market.
Got it.
Very good. Additional questions before we move forward? Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Randy, I do want to comment too that the franchise fees are slowly going down. So ultimately, the reason that we moved over is that the franchise fees continue to plummet because there's new ways of watching TV. So franchise fees come from your cable bill if you purchase cable, but as people continue to cut the cord, that was cutting the funding of that. Plus, there's changes at the state level that continue to take that down as well. So ultimately, probably will go away someday, but I thought just clarification wise that it's been a definitely plunging, and even though we have a lot of development here in Fitchburg, we still don't see a lot of people purchasing cable, and that's not really the move, as you all know. So
Well, and I appreciate that clarification, and you and I have had this conversation before, and I just somewhat frustrated, not with you, but with, let's say, AT&T, because I still have to go online to view Fact TV. For some reason, even though I have AT&T, I'm unable to watch it any government municipal function. Don't know why. It's just too time consuming to figure it out. Just go on so.
yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1714, we do have a one change in this one, and that is with so these are our video switchers. So actually what Chad is doing right now with this meeting, he's moving between cameras. We've been continuing to cut these down to get to as little as possible because they can cost quite a bit of money. So what Misty has done on this one is move out our portable switcher that was under 10,000. So that has been moved out of this one. Otherwise, there's no other changes. So that's just been moved to operational because it's under 10,000. No questions on 1714?
Seeing none, no.
All right, 1715. This is where we'll spend all our time, but not too much time. This is a new project, and the goal of this project was to look at all of our public meeting spaces, identify what those are. So I've been in coordinating with the council chambers and Genie Ceiling Room for updates, but we wanted to look globally at all of our what we call public meeting spaces. So when I say public meeting spaces, that means we're going to hold public meetings in these places. So it was my job to identify all of those places and replacement costs for equipment in those various rooms. There were a couple of rooms after we went through the initial phase of investigating, if you will, and determined that some of the rooms do not qualify or need it to be in the CIP, more or less. So you're seeing those zeroed out, like the Prairie View room and Cyene room. Those were considered public meeting spaces, but really at the end of the day, they've been changed or altered by other departments and their needs. So this is the list, the overall list of those rooms where we would potentially have or have public meetings, and then the cost to update that equipment moving forward.
Okay. Anything further?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Is there any questions before we move forward? All right, seeing none. Again, thank you, Jeremy. All right, next on the list is assessing with Chris. Chris Leeds.
All right, thanks everyone. So this is just a carryover project from last year. There's nothing changed. It's capital project 1539. And basically it's just kind of what Misty was talking about with the fleet vehicles. So our office currently doesn't have a dedicated vehicle to take when they go out in the field. They just use their personal car. So this would be a repurposing of a squad car for staff to use in the field. And again, there's no changes or anything from last year.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Questions for Chris? All right. Seeing none. Chris, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to building inspection. And I'm sure that's John. John, you're online. He is not?
He is not, so I will cover this one.
Okay, very good.
So this is project 2407. It's very similar to what Chris was just talking about with the assessing vehicles. Difference being that building inspection currently does have, I think it's 3 vehicles. The plan is for the next replacement that they will hopefully be able to use a used police squad to continue the life of that squad. Set up as a replacement fund, no changes.
Okay, thank you, Misty. Moving forward, City Clerk, Tracy Oldenburg. Tracy, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank goodness we're not having the same weather tonight that we were having last year around this time. And my internet is working great. So project 1039 is for the electronic poll books. This is a carryover. They are projected to be replaced in 2029. Nothing has changed since last year. They're working well. And I believe Misty had talked about the fund balances applied to this as well. I don't know if she wants to provide any feedback to the newer members, but nothing's changed since last year. So.
All right. Questions for Tracy? Yes, Alder Gerhardt.
So presumably we're going to be buying more electronic poll books with the addition of those 2 polling stations. So does the replacement fund going forward in 2030, is that increased based on from previous CIPs?
So I'll need to work with Tracy to see if that was already kind of accounted for in there, or if we need to present an update. But it's something that we could wait till next year, since the next replacement, as Tracy was alluding to, is paid for with fund balance, and then the replacement fund is after that.
Great, thanks.
I'll make a note.
And technically, we're only going to need a server unit. I do have enough Badger books to distribute to a 6th location, but we will need a new server unit.
Okay, very good. Additional questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Next on our list is economic development. Mr. Zimmerman. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Council. This is our rent-to-own townhome program as part of our housing initiative, and this is the one that would be the rent-to-own, kind of 10-unit townhome pilot project. And where that project is at right now is we're actually doing some more legal due diligence with Quarles and Brady. We've got a legal services agreement with them to do some of the risk identification and mitigation as part of that. But this shows that eventually we would use probably about $3 million, I think approximately. And we shifted from some of it being borrowing to all of it being out of the housing fund. That's been capitalized through the TID districts that we've closed. So once we get the kind of the legal due diligence done, we'll bring back that information to the City Council to kind of get the pulse check from you of if we want to proceed with the project and if we want to look at doing a pilot program somewhere in Fitchburg. Any
Very
questions?
Good. Yeah, questions?
Then I got my welcome to Fitchburg sign for the Southdale neighborhood. And this right now is identified, but if we are successful in creating TID number 16 in the Southdale neighborhood, if that's approved in August, then that would get shifted over to funding through the tax increment district number 16. But right now it's showing up at this line item until we get the ultimate approval on the TID district.
Very good. Questions for Mike?
And this is just to kind of bring Southdale up to kind of the Fitchburg brand and kind of amenities and look that we have elsewhere in the city.
All right, very good. Oh, there is one question. Go ahead.
So for the signs, I saw that we updated it with the new census information. I've been seeing that around
The
town.
population?
Population,
Yeah.
sorry, yes. Did that change with the addition of Southdale, or was that incorporated into this?
That includes Southdale.
Okay, just-
Yeah, when we did the calculation, it was the Fitchburg updated population, but then also that portion of the Southdale neighborhood that was coming to Fitchburg. And it's based on the 2020 census numbers. We wanted to kind of have that specific kind of data point that we were using for the numbers.
Great.
Okay.
It's at 3999.
I kept hoping for one more birth to kind of put us at that so we could change the
I know.
next
Mike,
number
Mike,
there,
name
but
for this.
yeah. Huh. I was looking for him, Dave.
All right, any other questions for Mike? No, none. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next on the list is finance. Misty Dodge.
So I just have one project, so it's the expenditure restraint. As we talked about in the committee of the whole meeting last time, we use our expenditure restraint aid that we get from the state when we qualify to reduce the amount of property taxes we need to levy to pay for our CIP. So that's what this project does, is it kind of shifts that funding source around. The changes is we are getting a decent increase for 2023, which is applied to 2024. So that went up from 650 to 750. And then we continued the same use of fund balance for year 5 to keep it at that 650 level, which was a strategy that was used last year and was identified in the mayor's letter.
Okay, questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Misty. Moving on to library. Wendy Rawson, you are, there you are. All right, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So just kind of a reminder about how the library functions. We are a separate fund from the general fund. For almost all of the projects we're going to look at here, we are using library fund balance, which is money that is controlled by the library board. So it can't be moved into other projects. First one we're looking at here, 5202, is the library outreach vehicle. So we have a small van that we use to do outreach programming during the summers. And this is simply the replacement of that. Nothing has changed here. We do hope that this would be an electric vehicle, but we'll see. Next one, 5203, is the self-check machine. So we have 5 self-check machines at the library. We do about 80 to 85% of checkout at the library on the self-checks. So they're an important piece of equipment for us. They are slated for replacement in 2025. Nothing has changed here. All right, this is a new one. This is a conference room remodel. So this is kind of looking at how we can use spaces in the library better. We have an area on the 2nd floor that is near the existing meeting room and conference room that has been underutilized. We've called it an art gallery. For a while, we had some interest in having artists display their work there. That has kind of waned over the years. And what we really could use is space for staff to meet. So we are looking at turning this into a staff conference room. Well, this will actually become the public conference room, and the old conference room will become the staff conference room. So this is putting up a wall. It's a temporary wall, so it doesn't require actual construction, and it's everything that kind of goes with that. We need the furniture, tables, chairs. We need to run some different lighting, AV, probably additional power outlets, that kind of thing. So that is for 2024. Right, this last one is a little bit different for us. So this is library building system. So this is what we put money away for every year to just kind of address any kind of problems we have with the library building. It's come in very handy recently because the chiller issues that we're having. So we were able to use money from here to hire Strand to design the new chiller and to work on that kind of thing. This is not library money. This is not controlled by the library board. This is council controlled money.
All right. Anything further before I ask for questions? Okay. Questions from council? Nope. Seeing none, thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you.
Good night. All right. Next on the list is the Senior Center. Jim McHone, you have the floor.
Jim McHone.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. 6351, this has been in the CIP for quite some time. As you can see, you kind of ping pong around, but I don't think any changes except moving out some funds into and reallocating them to different funds. Am I right, Misty?
Yeah, so this project was dissolved and incorporated into that AV project that Jeremy was talking about that was more citywide.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Misty, when we all met, being the senior center sharing space with the community center and the rec department, we're all using this equipment. And so it really made a lot of sense to pull this all together under one project versus one department saying they need it and it coming from a different fund. So I appreciate that.
We do have a question. Alder Gerhart.
So it's great that we keep it in here just to clarify that it's zeroed out, but in future CIPs, will we remove this completely?
Exactly. So since it was a change from last time to now, it's just for placeholder. Great. But then next year that page will go away.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Jill.
I think that's it on this page. What's the next one? Yeah, this is just a replacement fund for our car, so no changes. Right, Misty?
Yes, very true.
This one's new, new tables and chairs for the whole building. And again, us 3 different departments utilizing that building and all of the chairs and tables in there in addition to the AV equipment, it's just time for replacement of a lot of those things. As you can see, some of the tables hadn't been new since 2007. In fact, I picked up those conference tables to set them up this week, and they weigh a bazillion pounds, and they're old and they're damaged. And so it's just a good idea to start replacing these things, same as the chairs and the carts that they're on. A lot of them are broken. So that's why this is in there. So, and then Misty created a replacement fund, which I'm not sure why we haven't done that in the past either. So that was a very smart thing to do. So we're not hit with this big ticket item, every 10, 15 years.
Jill, do you want to talk about the hiring the consultant idea that's included in this one?
Yeah, so, as we were going through the money that's needed to kind of maintain this building, I had put this in here because I felt like there's just a lot of discussion about, what do we use the building? How do we use the building? Although I don't manage the rental part of the community center, it does impact me, and I'm always interested in who's using it and why. And I just felt like, I know since I've been around, I've never seen any sort of study to do sort of a cost benefit analysis of what are we renting for? Are we making money? Are we losing money? And I would find it very interesting to see what it cost us to rent when you look at everything from utilities to equipment replacement to staffing that has to be on site to cleaning. And then also the value, that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to rent to the community. Do we rent to nonprofits? Should we rent for parties? So anyway, I just did a little research on my own to look at what a cost might be to do a study such as this, because I think then as we ask for more things, it can help us drive these requests. Or tell us, what, that's not really the direction that we want to head for that building. So do we need all this state-of-the-art equipment if we really don't want to use it that way? So I don't know. I felt like it would be a reasonable request to look at a study and really identify how that building is used and the cost of it. So that was all. And then last I put in this, ever since COVID, our home delivered meals continue to be at a higher number. I think we still vary between 35 and 45. That kitchen is really small to receive all that food and then try to fill all those bags. We have 5 different routes, so we have to lay out bags. Move bags, move things around. We're kind of over by the sink. And just looking forward, again, what are we going to use that building for? When we did the remodeling back in 2012, I really wanted to upgrade that kitchen to a commercial kitchen. We really just needed to vent the stove and another hand sink, but we just couldn't find the funding for that. So by knocking out a wall that is in between the kitchen and the hallway where the Swan Creek room is, and there's water in the Swan Creek room, I just felt like we could expand the kitchen, utilize the space better. We already have a hallway, on the other side too. So just throwing out this because I think that the need is going to be there moving down the road for sure.
All right. Questions for Jill? Alder Gerhardt.
One thing I noticed was I thought we had the Civic Campus shuttle vehicle in a CIP. Is that in a different project?
Yep, that's in Public Works.
It's under Public Works.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And I'm still very much in support of that.
All right. Other questions? All right. Hearing none. Jill, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next on the list is technology. Terry Prindle.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So the telephone system, we did not make any changes to this project. It's mostly software based, and it's far enough out where I don't think any changes would be prudent at this point. And then project 1024, the website renewal would be, we did up that from 60,000 to 100,000 based on some of the professional services we used this last time, as well as the cost for housing the website in Civic Plus's environment as opposed to ours. Door access system, we did not make any changes to that. And then, where are we at? Okay, video security system, did not make any changes to that either. GIS, we did make some changes here. What we did was there were some flyover costs that decreased a bit because they previously did the flyovers every 3 years. Now they plan on as of next year doing flyovers every couple of years, so that reduced the cost, and we're going to move those costs to operating. And then this is where a lot of the big changes happened. So thank you, Misty. Previously, if you look at all the yellow there, those are all the changes that we made. Previously, our disaster recovery data center was separate components. And our production data center is what's called hyper-converged hardware, which is basically all one component. And what we're proposing we do is we take and upgrade the production hyper-converged equipment every 3 years, and then we roll down what was previously in production to the disaster recovery. That actually decreased our cost by about $20,000 by rolling that all into hyper-converged equipment. But where the increase in the annual cost came from was a majority of our network equipment. The costs have increased over the last couple of years very significantly. So we thought it a good idea to increase those costs at current market. I believe that's all I have. Any questions?
Yes, questions. All right, seeing none, thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well. All right, next on the list is the Fitchburg EMS, and then Chief Anderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. So the two of our CIPs here, they're kind of the same thing. So just kind of present to you that reminder. Both of these are a fleet part of the fleet replacement process. So Fitchburg has 5 ambulances. 3 of those run frontline everyday 911 calls. The other 2 we use for upstaffing during certain events, special events, rotating out through maintenance. So we have a fleet of 5 ambulances, and then we have 2 SUVs that we use for various other reasons that are all built into here. We purchase a new ambulance. Well, the plan is to purchase an ambulance every 2 years, and we keep that ambulance for 10 years, and then they just run the first 6 years of their life as a frontline ambulance. The last 4 years of their life, they move into that backup role. So some of the things that have been updated on here, like I'm going to be the first one, and I'm sure everybody else is going to share the cost of vehicles and supplies and everything that has skyrocketed over the last few years. So this is in what is updated in the CIP this year is that rising price of the ambulance. The other thing we kind of coordinate, as opposed to having a bunch of replacement CIPs out there. When we replace our ambulance, we replace about 5 of the big ticket items that go inside of it. That's the cot, that's the loading system, the cardiac monitor, the radios. So those are all built into that replacement cost that have a lifespan of about 10 years. So we replace all of that at the same time, as opposed to just creating, again, those multiple replacement programs. So what you see there then is the cost of all of those vehicles that rolls into the replacement cost with that additional, what the inflation rate is that brought us to where we're at today. A little bit of a hiccup is that process of replacing everything 2 years, like everybody else who's going to come after me said we can't get trucks. 2023, so this year is actually when we would have seen the next replacement. We ordered that last year. I ordered that last year and was told you'll see that in 2 years from now. So our ordering process is off just a little bit. The vehicle we should have got this year, we will not see until next year. And then the plan is to kind of work and get that back onto track. As we continue to respond to more calls, as we've shared in the past, we're on track to hit about 5,000 calls this year. Over the last 3 years, we've seen about a 20% increase. So we're on schedule to be needing another ambulance, staffed ambulance here, probably within the next 2 to 3 years. That would actually put a fourth ambulance in service, not in full time. Sorry, Misty, I know you're I'm kind of jumping all over the place. Targeted for 2025 to put another ambulance into service, not a 24-hour staffed ambulance, probably more like a peak time needs ambulance. So that does roll over into the operational cost. With that, in this whole kind of unpredictable plan of when we can actually get ambulances, the plan is to, when we replace the next ambulance, is to actually keep that ambulance and not sell it. Misty explained a little bit earlier kind of how it's built into selling from one department to another. Nobody wants our ambulances. We send them to auction, but then we do get the funds from that to help go into the replacement program. So there's a little bit in there in 2025 about keeping an ambulance versus selling it. And then that actually increases the overall numbers of ambulances that need that raise that replacement process as we move from 5 ambulances to 6 ambulances. So 4 of them would be staffed all of the time, and 2 of them would rotate through in a backup role. Kind of all over the board. I know we are a very unique kind of setup here. I guess, are there any questions, or Misty, did I miss any kind of highlights?
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to point out, because there was a fairly unique item in here. So with the replacement funds, we're really good about kind of planning for that next piece. But because the ambulances are on such a short, rigid schedule and the timing delays that Patrick is talking about, included in this CIP is what I called seed money, to kind of give them a little extra money now so they could order that stuff 1 year earlier and then have that flexibility for the future. So there's the one-time, again, seed money to kind of help them with this very unusual supply chain issue stuff. And then what Patrick was just talking about, the operating impact for 2309 in particular is relatively high. That would be the additional staffing both in 2025 and 2030, which is included as a separate page in the CIP document if you wanted to see how that was calculated.
Misty, is a short version with the operating costs, is that the Fitchburg share, or is that total?
So that is just the Fitchburg share. We assumed 55% being the Fitchburg share, but that's based on equalized value and how our equalized value changes compared to our partners. So that's a placeholder and will need to be trued up as time goes on.
Questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much, Chief Anderson. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our list for this evening is the Fire Department, Chief Pulvermacher.
Yeah, good evening. So I'm responsible for 2 aspects of the capital improvements budget, one of which is emergency management. Of that, Project 2238, that is early warning sirens. The only thing that really changed with that is the fact that it was moved to the emergency management budget. It's our effort to try to take one project away from Tim, who's got a whole plethora of stuff he's going to want to talk to you about today. So this is actually a very good placement in respect to the fact that it typically addresses things on the emergency management side. Public Works will very much be involved in the whole bidding process of that. We're just coordinating the budgeting aspect. The other thing that was moved is 2239, revised also, that's the command post. We had to increase the cost of these vehicles based on what we're seeing from an inflation standpoint and an emission standpoint. We've been made aware of the fact that emissions controls on these vehicles are going to be added and required to the tune of about $120,000 to $150,000 per vehicle. So we're trying to address that through the CIP. The reason why this was moved to emergency management is because it's a shared resource. We use it not only from the fire department aspect, but also with the police department. Anytime that we have a prolonged incident, we can bring it to the scene. It acts as a communication device as well as a central command post and sort of like a mobile office. Nothing changed with 2602, which
question?
I'm sorry, we do have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alder.
You know, that's been that much money, you know, it's not running that much. I question that. Did you look at converting it to CNG so that then you're outside of the emission? You know, if you're burning natural gas, you don't have that. You don't have that issue. These mandates that get forced on us, you know, I just.
So Alder Herbst, I do not disagree with you. We are too far away from the actual specification of that vehicle. It is a placeholder. We did have to budget for it because of the fact that it is a possibility, and CNG conversion may actually cost about the same. We're not exactly sure. As we get closer, we'll be able to spec that out and get a closer estimate as far as what we can expect.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Any other questions before we move forward? Nope, hearing none. Go ahead.
All right, 2602 hasn't changed. That brings us to 2229. The revision there basically also addresses the first of all, the delay. This was the vehicle that we had asked for a special meeting on. We are in the process of converting over, and so the budget as a result of that has been addressed and will actually be delayed until 2033 for replacement. 2233, the revision here was once again assuming 3 to 4% inflation and trying to address that within our projection. This is on a established replacement fund, and so those expenses are going to be assumed over the course of time. The revision on 2254, that's the SCBA and the related equipment. We're looking at cost increases here from a technological standpoint, also from a supply chain concern. So these, once again, are estimates, and we're marching out to 2026 and 2028 for the respective purchases. We'll be able to get a better estimate as far as the overall cost as we get closer. Right now, this seems to be the most logical estimate.
We do have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alder.
Yeah, so you just didn't bother projecting out any further than that, or the useful life of these things is such that we don't need to address it until beyond 2033?
So we have a 10-year CIP budget, and these typically, the SCBAs we're replacing every 10 years, and the compressors we're replacing about every 15 to 20 years. It sort of depends on the wear and tear on the unit itself. So this will actually be marched out another 10 years once we have that within the projection window.
Okay.
Additional questions? All right, hearing none. Go ahead.
No change to 2256. Change revision on 2265, the fire portable radios. This was removed from a replacement fund, and the cost of the radios as far as the price estimation based on the current equipment that we just purchased and marching that out 10 years. And then there was no change to the final CIP project item 2299.
All right. Questions from council? Yes, Alder.
So the vehicle that you all bought this year, that used vehicle that you saved lots of money by refurbishing, which one of those projects was that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was the 2229.
2229. Okay, so that's why we're not looking at it till 2033?
Correct.
Okay, and we're not putting a replacement fund in it given the scale of the purchase.
Yeah, we don't, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Actually, not exactly. So this one would be funded with fund balance for that next replacement, and then replacement fund established after that. So the next replacement is 2033, and then the replacement fund would come after that piece. Was kind of how we phased in those replacement funds.
Great, thanks.
And this also gives you an appreciation for the overall value of this current project that we're working on based on the estimate that we're seeing for something brand new.
Let me ask you this, though. So if we hadn't gotten this vehicle, then it was supposed to be replaced in, what, 2026? So there would have been a replacement fund? Like, this project changed significantly, I guess, is what my question is from the last CIP.
So the last CIP had it replaced in 2027 with a replacement fund starting in 2028. Since we did this kind of interim fix, that delayed that future one to 2023.
So it changes the long term, but it's not changing anything in like the next few years window.
It did reduce the 2027 and forward cost that was there last year.
Okay.
It moved that down to zero.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Alder Wheeler.
So, Misty, what's advantages to having a replacement fund? So what would this do if we just get rid of the replacement fund and say, well, we're just going to push this out to 2032 and borrow?
So the current strategy that's included in the mayor's proposed CIP is that equipment that is $1 million or more, we will use borrowing for, and equipment that is $1 million or less, we will do the replacement fund strategy for. We talked at the last time about, the financial planning benefits of having a replacement fund. So this one being just shy of $1 million wouldn't qualify for that piece. But how we've been phasing in all of these replacement funds over the last couple of years has been with that after that next replacement. So after that next replacement in 2033, then you would see the replacement fund come on after that. It's not the best. It's not my perfect world. I wish we would have it now, but it's kind of how we phased in those to balance the different competing needs.
Okay, so for you, Jill, or Misty, so what happens if we break radios now? Because that does happen, and those radios are $3,000, $5,000 a piece. Where do we get that money from?
So it depends on how much that replacement or repair is going to be. Right now, we have a communication budget in our operating budget that allows us to address it. If we had multiple, we would probably have to come back to the council for funding alternatives.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Alder.
One more question. For the fire fleet vehicles, the 2299. So those are more standard vehicles that I'm familiar with, not the large trucks. Is that right?
So the fleet ones,
Yeah.
yes, those are just our staff vehicles.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question.
Yep,
are you
please do.
considering
I've been
electric-
anticipating
Are you
it.
going to consider electric vehicles going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do know, we're waiting to see how the electric vehicles at Public Works work out for the city. We're trying to get a better idea of what we can expect out of them for longevity, not just longevity as far as the overall age of the vehicle, but how long we can expect that it'll operate. We know that there are certain aspects of our role in the city where electric vehicles might be an option. Right now, emergency response isn't one of them from a staff vehicle perspective. We are watching to see what happens with Madison and their electric fleet. They have the ability to absorb a little bit more than we do because of the fact that they do have some depth in their fleet from not only large vehicles but smaller vehicles. We're letting them be the beta tester for that, and then we're going to learn lessons from what they're going through. And that's how we're going to be able to determine what's going to work best for our mid-market city. And then, one of the things, and then I'll just give you one example, the fire engines that we have spec'd out in our CIP, we know that they're out there. We also know that they're twice as much. And the infrastructure for them is going to add another amount to that value, and that infrastructure has a tendency of changing. So we've been told that the Volterra that Madison is running is a $2 million engine, and right now we're looking at about $900,000 for an engine. So it's out there, the technology exists. The overall value of that vehicle is going to be determined over the short term here. Next 5 years, we'll have a really good idea as far as what we can expect.
It'd be interesting to find out from Madison, too, about the cost savings associated with that, because my understanding is that electric vehicles have far fewer mechanical regular repair needs, and obviously you're not paying for all the diesel fuel, and there are cost savings involved. Obviously, there's a threshold beyond which that initial investment isn't worth it. But I do wonder there's going to be a crossing point at some point, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to scratch the option. I do think that we have to stay on top of technology, and when it does become a value to Fitchburg based on what we've learned within the industry, we'll take advantage of it, no doubt.
All right. Additional questions?
Oh,
Go ahead.
just out of curiosity, is the type of fuel in the trucks of concern? Like if you're responding to a fire, if you've got diesel inside, that's a fairly thick liquid. It burns rather slowly. If you were using, for instance, compressed natural gas and something were to happen, it would be catastrophic. Lithium-ion batteries, I don't know what it takes to light them on fire, but once they get going, they really go.
Yeah. Well, it's the thermal runaway with the batteries that would be of concern. Once they go, they don't necessarily stop, and it takes a lot of water to put them out. And it's not so much putting it out; it's cooling it. Is basically what happens with a lithium-ion battery issue. From a diesel perspective, one of the reasons why we consider diesel, especially in something like our brush vehicles, is because of the fact that it doesn't have a catalytic converter. And during dry brush, you drive over something with a catalytic converter, and you're likely to light the field on fire. So it does make sense to have diesel. Diesel is a combustible fluid, not a flammable fluid. So it takes more than 100 degrees to ignite diesel versus under 100 degrees to ignite gasoline. So all of those things are taken into consideration. The other thing is, with a diesel engine, the compression, the torque behind that engine has a tendency of working better for things like our fire pumps and the overall weight of the vehicle. So all things to take into consideration. Now, torque behind an electric engine is significant, but it's that long-term incident, prolonged incident, that we're curious about and whether that's going to be sustainable over the long term. We know that the technology is catching up.
Okay, very good. Additional questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
You as well.
All right. Next on our agenda this evening is the Police Department. Chief Morales, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well there. Am I coming across well?
You are. Yes, thank you, Chief.
Okay. We'll start off with Project 2125. That is the police mobile and portable radios. That replacement is not set up up until 2032. In 2022, we just replaced those mobile radios. So it's not something that's going to be up anytime soon. If there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, I know that we're doing the mobile radios now with the fire department. I think that's working out pretty well. I know Joe left, but a little bit of a transition. But going now using Motorola, we're doing pretty decent on the transition. Any questions on that piece?
No, nothing yet. Nothing here.
Okay. Project number 2126 is our electronic weapons, also known as tasers. The lifespan of the tasers is 5 years. They're up for the next replacement cycle is in 2027. And the cost of that will probably be for the future inflation. We currently replace those or replacing those this year. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. The next project is 2140. Those are body cameras. They have a lifespan of about 5 years. The replacement is this year. The next replacement cycle is going to be 2028. The quantity is 55 cameras. That includes equipment and servers. Also to note is the future cost may change with inflation. We don't have those numbers until we get closer to that year.
Very good. No questions.
Okay. This one is probably going to require a little bit more conversation, and that is the police facility. It initially, and I believe if we go back 2014, 2016, there was $35 million that was allocated for the new police facility. It was dropped before I came to the department to 25 million. We are asking for the additional 10 million to come back to for 35 million. And that goes for the facility size of approximately 75,000 square feet for the new facility to accommodate the needs of the police department at least 20 years moving forward. If there's questions, I have a lot that I could talk about this, but I want to know where your questions are going for on that one.
Any questions for the chief at this point? Go ahead, Walter. Yes, go ahead, Walter.
Can you explain more about the 20-year projection?
Yes. Currently, and there's a sheet that I could show you that's in person. The 20-year projection is the department is currently at approximately 55 sworn with a civilian staff of approximately 17. That projection will grow with the size of the growth of the city. We're currently growing at over 700,000 residents a year. To keep up with the city needs, you're looking at a department, even in the next between 5 and 10 years, to be at approximately 40,000 residents. And getting at that number, you're looking at a staffing plan that's going to have to get you somewhere into the 60s or maybe even 70 sworn, not counting civilian. Having those needs, you need a basic functioning police station that's going to include, a indoor parking to upload and offload arrested individuals that need to be processed further through interviews and interrogations. You're going to need a larger inventory area, a processing of inventory and evidence to include a system that can accommodate the fumes. I think many people in City Hall, when we do recover certain drugs, can smell them up in City Hall. The current facility that we have in City Hall is not really built as a police department to have the separate sections or the basic skeleton of what a police department needs. So in other words, the city of Fitchburg has not really had, per se, a specifically built police station in its history. There's a lot of different unique items that are needed within a police department, some of them for evidence, some of them for decontamination, some for prisoner processing, and the care of the vehicles. We do have a CIP for vehicles. Whether we go to electric or non-electric, the new police vehicles all will have to require to be connected to an outlet to keep them from, to keep the computerized systems within them running when they're not in operation. So there are several needs that a current police station will need to have for the growth of the police department. And this is projections to fit what we have now and hopefully keep that department going, the police department, and not a need for another building for many years to come.
All right. No, we have no questions here. If you'd like to continue on with this subject or move forward, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, just some things, and just to ask, the police facility, there's a number of demands for it. And when we're talking about the space needs, it also is a needs for the city of Fitchburg campus. We've outgrown the basement level of the city hall. Currently, there was one room left, and IT has taken that room in the basement. There's one office left on the third floor. Amongst the different departments, there's really no privacy to do business. Recruitment and retention, not only for the police department, but for the entire city staff. We're one of the last two cities of the MPSIS team. That's Verona, Monona, Fitchburg, Sun Prairie, and Middleton. We're one of the last two old existing facilities for police. In fact, Monona is in the process of rebuilding their city hall / fire department / police department. And they're currently using the same architect that we are. If they move on in doing that, they're ahead of the game on this one. We will be the last city department without an updated police station. City conference rooms are difficult and very hard, and I think we all know that and have had those challenges. As far as the police department, we also struggle with conference rooms that have been turned into office space. Definitely not enough locker room for the staff as it is. Locker space is not big enough for other items that we need to store, such as equipment. We have 9 sergeants and a very small combined 2 offices. We have no room to house our detectives, and they have to be use separate small office space to conduct their business. And it's not effective for communicating current information that needs to be communicated amongst the team. We have 1 empty office or workrooms dedicated for private and confidential related business. No offices or desks for future staff for growth, and there's no room for evidence storage that we need to keep on hand. And in fact, I've already stated that the HVAC system that we have down there is not very conducive to the type of things that we're inventorying. We're at below minimal standards there. Safety and accreditation reasons, we have insurance costs. When we talk about different things that can be litigated against the city, this facility that we currently have will raise a lot of questions if we went through accreditation on potential risk that will cause payouts through our insurance. It's not fit to house evidence, as I stated. We're one of 2 cities in the western part of the state that do not have indoor parking for the squad cars. And that works for a number of different reasons. One, to include to upload and unload prisoners. The weather conditions restrict at times from squads to obviously from being parked. There's nowhere to park them inside, although City Administrator Breckland was able to get us some parking for our new squads that require to be connected to the outlet. The current garage at City Hall cannot house the overall department vehicles that are all now coming requiring electrical hookups. We have 1 city department electric vehicle that's going to be coming soon. That's going to need electrical charge. The FACT TV vehicle is inside that needs to be connected to an outlet. The more we move green, the more requirements that we're going to need for that garage to be basically charge the vehicles that the city of Fitchburg uses. Sustainability, again, I talked about vehicles and the eco-friendly building that we should be building will should last a longer time and save us money. Community-centric, Promega did donate the land, and I know that they're going to have say on the exterior looks of that building, so it's going to have to meet certain needs or requirements by them. And you've all heard about our recruiting and retention program. People want to be comfortable in their workspace. And currently, I can just attest for the Fitchburg PD, our workspace has been long overdue, and we are definitely very crowded where it's very difficult to conduct business down there. And we are body short. It would be nice to have a new facility that people who apply and become a police officer at Fitchburg can call their home. The added part on this that I will say is the 10 million, the 35 million that were allocated back in 2014. We have not discussed the inflation piece, and that'll be a future topic of discussion. That with 2020 and inflation, 35 million will be short as it is to build the needed space and facility that will be required for the current and future needs of the city of Fitchburg.
Questions from council? No, excuse me, Chief, no questions.
Okay.
We do have
the next project is 2198. That was removed, so I don't think we need to discuss much about that. And moving on to 2199, the police fleet vehicles. These vehicles, it varies from year to year. The average lifespan of a squad car is 5 years. It's been, after 2020, vehicles have been a very hot commodity and hard thing to find with the with our vendors because of the demand. But again, if there's any specific question, the description, we changed the description on 2 vehicles. We changed the numbers on 5 of them, and basically the replacement costs and trade-in costs are the ones that have changed due to the current changes in the price of a vehicle. If there's any questions specific, that's our information for the police fleet vehicles.
Very good. Additional questions, or questions, I should say. Yes, there are. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so what is the full scope of your fleet? Does that include, for instance, if you're going to get the police bike patrol in there, is that lumped in here? And is it just squad cars? Is it?
It's our K-9 squad. It's our community service employee vehicles. It's the sergeant vehicles, the squads that the officers drive, the unmarked vehicles that our detectives drive. That includes a crime scene trailer, fleet pickup. It includes the motorcycle. And I think that's all I have that's different. We have a fleet van, and the other ones are our squad cars.
And I can jump in quick and answer that a little bit too. So there is the list of all the particular vehicles that are included in this. Bike patrol in particular isn't considered capital because they're not $10,000 individually. So that would be part of the operating budget instead.
It's just an added piece. If you were I misunderstood what you meant by bike. Motorcycle is a vehicle. The bicycles, we do have some that we were able to obtain through Badger bounce back funds. Correct me if I'm wrong, Misty?
Nope, exactly right. And then at some point they'll need to get replaced, and that would be part of the operating budget, not the CIP.
So so the bikes are done individually, but I mean, there was a line item in here for tasers, for instance. Those are not $10,000 a piece, are they?
Nope. So the thresholds that we use is $10,000 individually or $50,000 as a group and purchased with a longer period of time.
All right. Yes, just go ahead, Walter Wheeler.
Do we have some type of fleet management system where we tracking vehicles by mileage and everything else? Because sometimes, I see the 5-year lifespan, but sometimes, if the city gets into financial bind, we may have to expand that, and then you could use mileage on the vehicles instead of saying like every 5 years. So is there kind of like a fleet management where we're tracking all that stuff?
So I'm not sure about the police department. I know in total the city doesn't have a fleet management system, but I will remind you that the squads that are the 5 years, once they are done being a squad, they go to another department to get continued to use. And the department heads are really good about keeping their eye on that too. So just because it's scheduled for replacement at that particular year doesn't necessarily mean that they will do it if it's unnecessary, but it is helpful to have that capacity because sometimes things will break early and we'll need to do it the other way around.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Of course.
And if I can add on one of those, I think one of the most recent vehicles that that was supposed to, or I don't know if it was given to another department that was done with its 5 years with the Fitchburg PD. The repairs were starting to outweigh the cost of keeping that vehicle. So the conditions and what's sad is, I don't want to use this word of hand-me-down, but when you're taking that squad and using it, it's unfortunately they don't look as new as one would think they would from the wear and tear.
And that's an excellent point too, is this whole reuse of police squads is a new, I'll call it experiment for the city of Fitchburg. We haven't been even able to try it as a pilot yet. It's kind of hopeful that this will all work out because it should save the city money in the long run, but it is still an experiment at this point. So we'll keep our eye on it, make sure that it's not overly burdensome on the maintenance side that offsets the benefits on the other side.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, what's typical mileage on a squad that's at end of life for the police usage?
I'm going to have to find that. I don't have that answer for you, but I do know that we have it, unless you got something, Misty.
I do not know, sorry.
Okay, but I will get that. I know that Dana and Ned will have a traction or ability to find that number for you. If you can give me some time, I get that for you in the future.
I'm just wondering, is it in the neighborhood of 100,000, 250,000, just ballpark numbers, because if somebody's going to give you a car with 200,000 miles, that seems more like a burden than a gift.
So I'll jump in solely from anecdotally. My understanding is it's not that high of mileage, but they are hard miles. You think of what the police officers do around town. It's a lot of accelerating and stopping and just hard miles. So the actual mileage might not be as high, but they would be. We need to make sure we keep in account for what those maintenance costs would be for the hard miles.
I would suspect you're looking at about 125,000 on average at 5 years.
All right, additional questions? All right, hearing none. Chief, thank you. Thank you for your time and.
Randy, if we may,
hang on.
Could we move to administration while we're waiting for? So he's going to be long though, and I'd hate for Deanna to have to stay on that long. So if we could move to Chad while we're waiting for the Parks Director, is that okay?
We are done with Chief Morales?
Oh, and look, Scott showed up.
Thank you, Chief.
Maybe.
Good night.
We'll go to Scott.
Okay, very good. So we're moving on to Parks. We're keeping the order then at this point.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good. Scott, welcome. The floor is yours. Scott Endo.
Good evening. The first project we have is Moraine Edge Park, 6244. That is outside of the 5-year window, if you would, but it is there for $2 million in 2029. But we won't begin to do anything there yet.
I have a question about.
Oh, I apologize. Go ahead.
Could I ask a question about that, Scott, before you move on?
Yeah, sure.
So I know that Moraine Edge Park, I guess I haven't seen the conceptual drawings in a while, but I know we are building out a couple of neighborhood plans very soon. And I believe that the general idea of where the Moraine Edge Park is somewhat close to those neighborhood plans. I don't know if there's any overlap, but has that been discussed with the planning department?
Yep, actually, I have spoken to Dee. I don't know specifically about that, but certainly it is going to run. It does run parallel to the power lines, between the power lines and Irish Lane. So it certainly would be in the, is that the Greenfield neighborhood plan? And as I understand it is part of the, there's Dee.
Yeah, I'm right here. It is Greenfield, and we will consider that.
Great, thanks.
For clarification, it's adjacent to the Greenfield neighborhood plan. It's not part of the neighborhood plan.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Other questions? All right, hearing none, you may move forward. Thank you.
You're welcome. Park system improvements. This is the CIP that we began 3-4 years ago, which really, as you may know, the park improvement fees and the fee in lieu of parkland dedication They build the new parks initially, but then certainly after an amount of time, potentially 25 years, there are things that need to be replaced. So this CIP was developed in order to have some funding to replace those pieces of equipment, play equipment, those kinds of things. And you can kind of see that we've got quite a big list for 2024. So that's kind of a list for that. I don't know if there's any specific questions about those.
I have one question. When we replace equipment at a park, does the old equipment, is it removed and the new equipment that we approve replace the old equipment?
That's correct, Randy. That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And it's not only play equipment. We've got lights and
right,
playgrounds and just giant gazebos, those kinds of projects.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then the next one, we've got tennis court and pickleball court revised. And actually this, in Misty, this is really an initiative of Misty and the mayor that, we're working on a 35-year replacement plan for both the McKee Farms Park tennis courts and the McGaw Park pickleball courts. And those are really going to be the hard courts, if you would, within our park system. So we're in the process of getting those replaced, but with a 35-year replacement, and we're kind of estimating what it's going to cost in 35 years, and then allocating dollars annually until we get to that year.
All right, we have no questions. Moving forward.
Large park shelters.
Sure.
And actually this, the big project that we've got scheduled for 2024 is Tower Hill. And as I understand, it's part of the TID closure. So we're going to be working on a renovation of that park shelter. And we also received, if you scroll up a little bit more for me, Misty, a park shelter solar. We've got some funding, so we'll take a look to see which shelters we might be able to institute those solar updates. And then also we've got scheduled to replace the siding at McKee Farms Park in 2024. And what we've done too, at the direction of, Mr. Breckland has asked us to kind of update the prices. So we did increase those prices in those projects to more accurately estimate what they're going to cost. New development. This is a big, and this has actually kind of been something that Finance and Misty has put together, which has really helped organize the development, of our new parkland. And you can see in 2024, we've got some Southdale Park additions. We've got some Fahey Field additions of the pickleball courts, lighting, Terravesa phase 1 for the egg park. So we've got some big items and projects scheduled for 2024. I will mention that if we go back to that, just as a note for 2024, the Southdale Park new amenities, we did include a playground, but there were some other specific amenities that we were discussing for 2024, but we did decide that let's make it a little bit more general so that we can, take a look at the park and see exactly what we'd like to do in Southdale. I will report that Alder Allen, we've met and actually we're going to begin to start to reach out to the Southdale neighbors to kind of talk to them to see what they might recommend or like to see as amenity improvements in Southdale in 2024. We are in 2023, we're going to replace the basketball court there. I know Anna and the forestry department, we've done an Arbor Day activity, so we planted some trees. We have been doing some work in Southdale this year, so certainly I think they're seeing a park park presence, or certainly a park commitment to their park there.
We do have a question here. One moment, Scott. Alder Gerhard.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, so for these 2024 projects, these are all covered by park improvement fees? And we feel like, I mean, I'm curious about the spending down of that account. We feel pretty good about that we have enough to fund the hub and these new projects, et cetera.
Yes, so Scott and I worked together when we were doing that pickleball amendment that was just reconsidered last night to make sure that all of the projects that were included in the last adopted CIP were kind of accounted for in that amount of money that was available before we started talking about the pickleball courts.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Misty.
Go ahead, Scott.
If I may, I really like the idea of, somehow creating an endowment fund, if you would. The idea of a partnership with groups, maybe this might be the lead into Friends of the Fitchburg Parks, a 501c3, or those kinds of those kinds of arrangements to help. Certainly we realize that, the amenities, it's one thing to have the funding to build the amenities, but certainly we've got to keep in mind the maintenance of those amenities, and we need to continue to try to be creative to create some funding sources to help with the maintenance of those facilities.
Can I ask a question about
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question about that, Scott, because I also do think that's a really interesting idea. Those Friends of the Park organizations, is that kind of a community effort that's separate from the city, or is the city help facilitate that in some way? Okay, it's just a completely separate.
And that would be something that we need to work through, but certainly I would envision it would be a separate 501c3, Friends of Fitchburg Park, where they could be the organization that would go out and generate dollars, create the fund, and certainly there would be some work that would need to be done in order to organize it and make sure with procedures and policies. But certainly, the idea of creating a $2 or $3 million endowment fund, and then you get interest off of that, and then you use that interest to maintain these facilities. I think it's a.
I guess my question is, would the endowment be hosted like through a community, like the Madison Community Foundation, or would it be separate from the city finances?
I deferred to Misty, but I would think it would be separate. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a variety of ways we can do it. We actually do have two endowments that are held within city finances, held at the Madison Community Foundation, but they're kind of on my books. One's for the splash pad, and one is for the library. So that's kind of how we did that. But then there's also the Friends of the Library, the Friends of the Senior Center. Those groups, when they have a separate 501c3, they could do an endowment themselves. So we'd have to kind of figure out how that works best between what we would need to make sure that the money is going how it's supposed to be, but also give them the flexibility based on their structure.
Thanks.
All right, additional questions? Hearing none, you may continue, Scott.
Thank you. This is the recreational around Dunn's Marsh, and I do see it's in that 5-year window. So we're going to have to begin to start to take a look at this. And as I understand it, it basically would be a circular kind of route around Dunn's Marsh. But as I understand too, it would need to be in partnership with Dane County and grants and those kinds of things. But certainly with it being within that 5-year planning window, we might need to, we'll need to begin to start to do some of that outreach to see if it's a viable project.
Dave, go ahead.
There is a loop already. Now you have to cross Seminole Highway, but there is a loop around it already. And to incorporate that, to keep it on that side of Seminole Highway, you're in a wetland, and you're going to be, it's going to have to be a boardwalk and incredibly expensive. And, there's 5,000 bicycles a day crossing Seminole Highway. The people can walk across there, and the loop takes you around. I just feel unneeded.
And I think that's a great point, Dave. It's within that 5-year window, so we need to, this may have been created 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, which at that time maybe that path on the east side of Seminole may not have been there. So to your point, maybe this maybe this isn't needed. So I think it just, now that it's within that five-year planning window, we need to begin to take a look at it. And to your point, it may be mute at this point because it's already there.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
No additional questions, so you may move forward, Scott.
Yep, this is phase one of the hub. Still kind of rolling along.
No questions?
You know, and
I do have a question.
We do have a question.
We're on hub phase one.
That's correct. Mhm.
Can we just get an update? Because I know the plan was to have started the project already. So can we get an update about what's going on? And has there been any adjustments to the project since it probably won't get started until next year?
I don't think any adjustments were made to the actual timing or funding side of things. Unfortunately, it has been paused, but is there anything you want to say on the funding side?
So I guess the two changes that are identified is there's a floor scrubber that we need, so that was added to 2024. And then the building systems replacement fund, that was delayed. So it's new. We hadn't had that established before, but we also did delay that by a year because of the delays in the project.
So as far as the project itself goes, design has started on the hub phase one. Unfortunately, it was paused in early January as a result of some easement issues with the parcel that was donated to the city. Staff has been trying to work through those easement issues since they were identified. And unfortunately, we have not been able to come to an agreement on that at this point in time. So staff is evaluating alternative options at this point in time as far as how to work around those easements. Or shall I say, get those easements lifted through alternative means.
Additional questions? Additional questions? Hearing none. Go ahead, Scott.
In hub phase two, and Dee may want to offer some thoughts here, but it has been delayed, which makes a lot of sense to me. And you know, at the end of the day, phase one, I guess I see it as kind of an incubator to determine whether a phase two would be needed. So that's kind of the thought. Certainly, we want to get phase one up and running and see how it functions and see if it provides the services that are needed there. And if they're busting at the seams, then maybe we go to phase two of the hub.
No questions, Scott.
Thank you. And then is it the teen center? And I'd defer to Dee on this one, if you wouldn't mind. Dee?
Yeah, sure. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I believe the teen center is consistent from what has been shown before. The building replacement fund was added this year. And so, Misty, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the important thing was the building replacement fund.
Correct, and then an update to the operating costs is included as well. So one of the new forms that's been attached to the CIP for anything that has a more significant operating impact, we have an additional kind of supplemental sheet that shows you how that operating cost was calculated. So that was updated as well.
All right, questions?
Thank you, Dee.
Hearing none. Thank you, Deanna.
Sure thing.
And Scott, if you'll continue.
Well, this is our community tree gravel beds, which is scheduled for 2025. So that's certainly not in 2024, but still in our plan for 2025. Kids Crossing Playground is 2026. And in this, in circling back to the Friends of the Fitchburg Parks, this may be an initial project that the group may take on because it does call for some, half and half donations along with TID closure. So this might be a signature project, the first project that the Friends of the Fitchburg Parks could undertake.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Scott? All right. No questions, so thank you, Scott, for your time. Have a good evening.
Likewise. Have a good night.
Good night. All right, moving on, on to Public Works. And Tim Volker is here with us, so the floor is yours.
Good evening, Tim Volker, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. Our first project is project number 1699. It's the Building and Grounds Fleet Vehicle. No changes from last year. The next project is project number 1720. It's the Oak Hall AV project, and that project's been reallocated, and it was reallocated to CIP number 1715, which Jeremy spoke earlier tonight about. And the project number 1715 includes all AV needs within City Hall and the Community Senior Center. That's why this project was reallocated there. The next project is project number 2127. It's the evidence processing facility. And what's new about this project is it's been moved over to Public Works. And then also, I believe, Misty, there was some additional funding provided for this the first year?
Yep, so we've learned a lot in the last couple of years between the building chiller going out, or the library's chiller going out, and some issues we're having at the brand new fire stations, that it's smart for us to set up these building system replacement funds right away, because we know something is going to break when we don't expect it to, and it's really helpful to be able to address that right away without having to either figure out financing or defer maintenance or any of those items. So every building that the city has now will have a building systems replacement fund established with it, and then we move them all to Public Works under Building and Grounds, since ultimately they are responsible for all city facilities.
Next up is project number 2236, which is fire station number 3, the building systems replacement fund. This was moved over to Public Works, and I believe we removed $20,000, which was a one-time landscaping project, and that's been moved to the maintenance of the native vegetation. And then we also added $35,000 in 2024 for the replacement fund. Next up is project number 2241, fire station number 2, building systems replacement fund. This is new to Public Works, as previously stated. And then for fire station number 2, we added $35,000 in 2024 for the replacement fund. And then lastly is the fire station number 1, moved over to Public Works, building replacement fund, and for fire station number 1, we added $35,000 in 2024 for replacement of that building. Next up is project number 6262, parking lot resurfacing, and this project remains unchanged from the year before. Project number 6302, City Campus Building Systems Replacement, was revised. And what we revised, we kind of moved some of the projects around. I believe the City Hall boilers were moved to 2025. We added some small window to replacement at the community center in 2026, and then we also added the senior center replacement of the lower level carpeting in year 2032. And lastly, for buildings and grounds, we have project number 6304, the maintenance facility building systems. And I believe that has remained unchanged from the previous year. Next up, we move to general, and project number 2016, GPS system, remains unchanged from the previous year. Next up is project number 3108, fleet maintenance equipment revised. And basically, this was revising the fleet maintenance. And specifically,
Just the funding source.
The funding
So, yep,
source.
we included this in the investment plan, so that was carried over into the CIP.
And then the last project for general is project number 3109, Transit Shuttle, and this was revised from the previous year. We delayed the project from 2024 to 2025 based on the upcoming intra-city transit study results and discussion. And then we also changed the grant match from ARPA to TID closure due to this delay. And next, we move to parks. Under parks, we have project number 6198, which is the park equipment revised. And basically, we kind of added some new vehicles, updated equipment numbers, updated the cost to reflect current equipment costs, and adjusted some of the useful lives on the equipment. Next category is our refuse and recycling, project number 4652, recycling drop-off site. And this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Yes, sir.
And it happened before you got here. Are we using the camera system? Because whenever I'm there, I am the police officer, and I am chasing people away that are trying to drop brush off, and they're arguing with me that it's okay. And people are, where do you live? Oh, I live in Madison. And are we using, we spent the money on a camera. Is it any deterrent? Because, based on my experience spending time there, no one's paying any attention.
Yeah, we have been using the camera system. So since I've been here since January, there's been a number of instances where someone has come, they've notified us, we've been able to use the camera system and read the license plate, and then follow up with a letter and citation for the misuse if they were outside the city limits.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our next category is sewer. Project number 4638, our Sain Interceptor Extension project, and this was revised from the previous year. We increased the estimates for all phases to better correlate with the increase in construction costs. We basically an additional $577,500 in 2024, and we reduced the length of the interceptor extension by 300 feet based on kind of our preliminary schematics for the project. And then in 2029, we increased from 90,000 to 135,000, and in 2030, we increased the construction cost from 900,000 to $1.35 million. Yes.
Is that a very deep one? It seems like when we did it originally, we were down like 25 feet. Is this one? Is that the same one I'm thinking about?
That I don't know the details on how deep we are for this project. I can follow up with you and let you know.
No, don't worry about it. I just know one of them we took specialized equipment when you're down, trying to put it down 25 feet.
Our next project is project number 4643. It's our Fitchburg Road sanitary sewer lining project. This is a new project, and basically this project came along due to the Fitchburg Road reconstruction project. Since we're in there reconstructing the road, we took a look at the existing sanitary sewer, and in order to reduce the infiltration into that sanitary sewer system, we're looking at lining it instead of replacing it. So that therefore this project was added to coincide with the roadway reconstruction project.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
So it says that we're going to have a cost-sharing agreement with the town of Verona. So is Is there an MOU, or is this the cost for the entire project, or is this some sort of predicted share? I know I'm just suspicious of the ability to get that MOU, I guess is what I'm saying.
So the $108,000 is the total project cost, and we have yet to have those discussions. I believe next year Tracy was going to engage the town of Verona on that. We've kind of had preliminary discussions with their public works director. He is aware, that they are on the hook for part of that maintenance.
Yeah.
So, an MOU would be prudent for both Verona and Fitchburg to have it in the future for both the roadway and sewer.
Yeah, and I don't know if Goose Lake is as well, that stormwater project, or is that already fully funded?
Believe that, and we'll get into that more, but I believe we were using some grant funding for Goose Lake.
So this one, Gabriella, though, it's our sewer, they don't have any, so this would be solely borne by us.
We don't share that sewer.
No, we don't share.
No, it's just, no, that's why I'm looking
Oh,
at directly.
yeah, I don't think I'm pretty sure.
Verona's on, there's Verona, town of Verona has connections to the sewer.
So we do
They
share.
have the
Yes.
lift, they have the lift station for the Goose Lake to get it onto the Madison, going to Madison Met. But I think our sewer is not, it might get common where the line goes to Madison Met, but I don't think we're common with them. I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, in the project description, it states sanitary sewers jointly owned by City of Fitchburg and Town of Verona, so, I don't know where exactly the connections are, but I'm assuming it's on the west side of the road. Because there are, a handful of properties that are Town of Verona there that probably connect to that sewer.
Sure, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah. And then next up lastly in our sewer category for Public Works is project number 4699, and that's our lift station equipment. This is a newly added project, and the city owns and operates 2 lift stations. Terra Vesa is one of them that recently came online, and then the Badger Lane lift station, which is owned and operated by the city of Madison, but we have an intergovernmental agreement for that lift station. And basically this project is to fund the routine maintenance and replacement of components that are needed for these lift stations, such as the roofs, pumps, generator, and ancillary equipment.
This one, if I may, I'd like to add one piece because it's come up in a recent meeting, I believe. There is a separate line on the utility bill for residents or property owners that benefit from these lift stations. So that separate charge is what pays for this replacement fund.
Question.
Go ahead, Bill.
So at the lift station here, it says the useful life is 50 years. To what does that apply? I can't imagine that pumps are going to last 50 years.
The pumps don't. The wet well and, probably the concrete slab you're probably going to have the longer life. But, yeah, pumps vary, too, depending on usage, the manufacturer. There's a lot of variables that play into the pumps. But they will have a shorter life than the actual structure itself.
Then I'll point out there is a supplemental page on this one as well that lists each one of the different components of the lift station and then what that cost is and then what the useful life is for each one of those individual pieces. That's 224.
Go ahead. Additional questions? Go ahead, Tim.
We move into the next category, stormwater. And our first project is project number 4702, the Stormwater Pond Dredging and Retrofits project. And this project remains unchanged from the prior year. Next up is project 4711, our Traceway Drive Storm Sewer reroute project. And this project was revised from the previous year. We updated the cost of the project, so we had a cost increase from $283,000 to $432,000, and this was to revise to reflect the opinion of probable construction costs that we got from the engineers. And then we also moved this project up from 2028, 2029 to 2027, 2028. So basically a full year we moved this project up. Next up is project number 4713, our Fitchburg Road Stormwater Project. And this project was revised from the previous year. We moved the project from 2025 to 2024, and this was to coincide with the reconstruction of Fitchburg Road. And then we also updated the construction cost from $184,500 to $500,000, and that's to reflect the most recent cost estimate we have for the project. And then we also shifted funding sources to reflect primarily funded by the grant on this project. Any questions regarding this? I'll move into the next project, project 4714, Drainage and Flooding Improvements Project. This project remains unchanged from the previous year. Next up, project 4718. It's our Lake Barney Watershed Project, and this project was revised from the previous year. We updated the total future cost from $656,000 to $675,000. That was based on our most recent project estimates we have. We're anticipating $300,000 to be funded by the Village of Oregon for this project. And we also removed the federal grant funding since we're utilizing that CDS dollars on other projects that are moving forward for this project. And then also this project is really contingent upon the Village of Oregon and them completing a conveyance channel through Lerner Conservation Park and some additional improvements in order for us to move forward with our side of the project.
Go ahead, Alder.
Question on this one. So my understanding, based on when we had this committee, the whole discussion about this like 3 years ago, was that one of the big unknown costs was the wetland delineation of the area, and that there's potential like wetland credits that we would have to pay for with the construction of the project. And that was the big outstanding cost that's been stuck in my brain for a long time. Is that still a concern, or is that something that we're going to have to explore next year as we get closer to the project? I have to imagine that given the drought that we're in, wetland delineation might be a little easier right now than it is in other parts. I mean, I know it kind of depends on the year, right, that you do it?
It does. I haven't heard of any issues with the wetland delineation on this project. I can follow up with Ben Schulte, our environmental engineer, to see if he still has any concerns regarding that. You mentioned it was about 3 years ago?
It was when Claudia Guy was the stormwater engineer, and there was a presentation at COW, and I can send it to Ben if that's helpful, but I just, that was like a red flag that's been in my brain ever since this project, and like unknown costs of like up to $1 million is sort of the deal, like, because if you have to do those offset credits for wetland, and because of the nature of the flooding, we could accidentally be creating DNR wetlands by definition that we would have to mitigate.
Okay.
That was my understanding of the project, so I just wanted to flag that.
I'll follow up on the wetland delineation. Our next project's 4719, and this is upsize the Schumann Drive storm sewer. And this was revised from the prior year. We increased the cost of 3% for inflation, and this increased it from $800,000 to $824,000. Next up, we have project number 4723. It's our Lacey Seminole Regional Stormwater Project, and this was revised from the previous year. We added an additional $80,000 for the final design and permitting in 2025, and then we delayed construction from 2025 to 2026. Project number 4725, it's our flooding north of Dunn's Marsh project, and this project was revised from the prior year. The cost increased from $235,000 to $645,000, and this was to revise based upon the most recent cost estimate. And then previously, we were going to have a consultant design this, and we're looking to design this one in-house to save on some of the additional costs that we're seeing in construction. So by designing in-house, we'll help have somewhat of a savings to offset that additional construction cost. Project 4726, storm sewer on Floran Drive and Lyman Lane. This project remains unchanged from the previous year. Project 4727, Nine Springs Creek Restoration. This is the golf course. This project remains unchanged from the previous year. And our last project within our stormwater category, we have project 4798, and that's our stormwater equipment. And that remains unchanged from our previous year.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so several projects, the costs have been revised upward by a factor of 2 or 3, and others, you're saying, we're just going to leave it. And is that just because it's too far in the future to project out, or why are we leaving some of these alone and others are wildly more expensive?
I think that what we're seeing is as you progress through the project, you learn more of the details. So that the projects you're seeing the increase on, those have been worked on heavily this last year. And, you know, the city previously, the last year or two, had several studies done. So as these studies have come to a completion, more of the details have come to fruition. So we're able to kind of get a handle on the costs. On top of that, you're seeing construction costs escalating on everything from materials to, you know, personnel on projects, equipment that they utilize. So the projects you're not seeing that is we really haven't worked on that. You will see it once we kind of dust off the cobwebs on those projects and move forward on that, so.
Yes, go ahead.
So I thought we had a pump, like a big pump for the stormwater utility, and I just didn't see that in, is that part of the stormwater equipment?
Let's see.
Because I thought that, I mean, I just remember purchased that like a year or two ago.
We do have a pump.
I just didn't see it in.
Then we purchased about 2020, I think.
Yeah. And it was like $100,000. It seems like it would be within the CIP.
Yeah, we'll make a note and get it added to that replacement fund if it's not in there now.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions? Under stormwater, that is. Now we'll move on to streets.
All right, next category, streets. Project number 3198 is our highway equipment project, and that's been revised. You'll see kind of the spreadsheet with the items marked in yellow were the items that we revised for our streets equipment. Next up is project number 3199. It's our snowplow fleet and equipment, and that was also revised from the previous year. And you'll kind of see the items that were revised. We extended the useful life of our plow trucks from 10 years out to 11 years was really the big change. Our next project is Project 3319 Street Resurfacing Program, and this project was revised from the previous year. You'll see an odd year increase in highway maintenance expenditures come from the LRIP funding, which the city is eligible for in odd years only. And then we also remove funding from special assessments for curb and gutter due to a policy change the city approved a couple months ago. And the curb and gutter costs will instead be charged to the stormwater rates, if you recall. Next project is project number 3365. It's our Herman Road Realignment Extension Project. And this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Project number 3367 is our Cyene Road project from McCoy Road north to the city limit. And this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Project number 3368 is our South Cyene Road project, and that's from McCoy south to Lacey Road. And this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Our next project, Project 3450, traffic calming program, was revised from the previous year. We delayed the original project from 2024 to 2025 due to staff capacity constraints. We've been out without a transportation engineer since I believe it's September 2022. We're looking to get that filled here shortly. And then also the city's working on revising the neighborhood traffic management process. So we wanted to get those revisions in place prior to rolling out the traffic calming program project. And then we also changed the funding source from ARPA to TID closure since the ARPA funding has been obligated by the end of 2024. So since we delayed the project to 2025, we changed the funding source to TID closure. And then we also added $48,000 for speed feedback boards based on the 2023 update to the ARPA TID closure investment plan. Our next project, Project 3479, our street lighting project, was revised from the previous year. We revised funding from ARPA to TID closure, and that was based on the available funding. Our project 3486 sidewalks and paths project remains unchanged from the previous year. Next up is our Fitchburg Road project, and that is from Lacey to Nesbitt. And that project remains unchanged from the previous year. Our next project is Project 3495. This is our Lacey Seminole intersection, Lacey East project, and this is the project that's currently under construction right now, and this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Project 3497, maintenance of arterials. This project remains unchanged from the previous year. Project number 3502, project is the CTH-MM Oregon Road to US Highway 1218, and this project was revised. We changed the name first from Rimrock Road resurfacing to County Highway MM Oregon Road to US Highway 1218 to better reflect the project location and street names. And then we delayed the project from 2025 to 2026 to mirror Dane County's current CIP plan. And then since this project is a county-led project, we removed the original total project cost of $950,000. And then we revised it to only include the city share, which is $200,000, based on the updated cost estimates we received from the county this year.
This one I'd like to jump in on quick because this also came up during our committee of the whole presentation last month. We do have fund balance that's in excess of our policy. So it came up about, how are we going to strategically and intentionally spend that down to be back within policy. And one of the strategies that's included in this proposed CIP is there's a couple of road projects in particular that are primarily grant funded. This one is one of them, mostly funded through Dane County, and there's a cost share. So when we get back to administration, you'll see there's another CIP project that uses fund balance for projects that are that have a small grant share match. So that's why this one is funded that way.
Our next project, Project 3503, County Highway D from Sparklestone to 450 feet south of Burnlin, and this was revised from the previous year. We increased the planning from $1 million to $1,080,000, and this was revised based on a cost estimate and funding from other entities from Dane County. Project 3506, our Fitchburg Road. This is north of Wayland to south of Wayland, revised from the previous year. We delayed this project from 2024 to 2026 due to city staffing constraints. This goes back to the transportation engineer position that's been open for the last several months. And then also the upcoming update to the bike and ped plan that we use to determine the priority locations for future bike lanes. So we thought it would be prudent to get the plan in place first prior to moving forward with any future bike lanes. And then we also added $50,000 in design costs in 2025 to account for the delay and current estimates of design costs for the project. And then we'll continue to have conversations with the town of Verona regarding a fair cost share agreement for the project. Our next project, Project 3507, Latitude 43 extension, was revised from the previous year. We increased the construction cost from $500,000 to $600,000. This was based on the cost estimates we received recently for the project and also an increased inflation rate. And then we also added a design cost that was inadvertently left out previous years of $120,000 in year 2027.
And can I just clarify?
Yes.
That's that section of road, that just like small little piece of road that's missing. That was why we couldn't run the bus route. Down
Correct.
the road. Okay.
And I have a question. Is this just strictly for the road itself? Does that cover the relocation of utilities? I'll say telecommunication and power.
Correct. That's an all-inclusive cost of utilities, roadway, any underground utility work. Our next project, Project 3508, Irish Lane from Fitch Hatchery Road to South Saline Road, was revised from the previous year. We delayed the project from 2026 to 2027 due to the upcoming update to the bike and ped plan that I previously mentioned. And then we also changed the funding source for the bike lanes from borrowing to grants or donations. Our next project is project number 3510. It's our street resurfacing with QCT, and that was revised from the previous year. We removed $500,000 of funding from 2024 due to unavailable ARPA funding. I don't know, Misty, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so we received that $3.2 million of ARPA funding, and the investment plan had ideas for much more than that. One of the items that was included in the 2023 update to the ARPA plan was to remove this $500,000. Still do a project, but keep it to the $1 million that was originally approved in 2023.
Our next project, Project 3514, County Highway MM Bike Underpass, and this is a brand new project. This underpass will allow connection from Terra Vesa and Uptown with the Capital City State Trail, which was once the Nine Springs Hill development. And basically, we're looking to do this underpass because an at-grade would be very dangerous and for pedestrians, and adding a bike path on the east side of the road would be costly due to the property acquisitions. Therefore, we went with the underpass here. And we did apply for TAP grant funding and were successful in the year 2026 for this project. Our next project, Project 3515, it's our Haight Farm Drive, Lacey to US Highway 14, and this is a new project. Basically, this road is experiencing additional traffic volumes as the uptown area to the west is built up, and we're basically looking to change this from a rural section to an urban section road. Our next category is our water utility category. Our first project in water is project number 4518, and this project is Well 12 and Pump House, and this project was revised. Additional funding due to rising construction costs was what was revised for this project. Next project is 4519. It's our Well 13 and Pump House, which was revised from the previous year. We increased 2028, which is the design, from $180,000 to $270,000. And then in 2029, which is the actual construction of the well, it was revised from $1.85 million to $2.7 million due to the rising construction costs. Project number 4520 is our Well 7 and pressure reducing valve improvements, and then Well 8 abandonment project. And this is a brand new project. So improvements are needed at Well 7 and the Swan Creek pressure reducing valve to create an independent northeast zone for the utility. And Well 8 is not as efficient. It has higher nitrates in the water and will not be needed to supply the water system once the south system is incorporated into the northeast zone. So this is kind of the reason why this project came along. And then project number 4522 is our SCADA project, and this project remains unchanged from the previous year. Next up is our water tower repainting project, and this project remains unchanged from the previous year. And project number 4532 is our water tower D, has been revised from the previous year. So this project is what we're working on right now. It's under design, and we added $1.6 million in additional funding in 2024 due to rising construction costs. Towers have become very expensive, and we're seeing that just in this project alone. And then we also added $200,000 to complete the repair work at towers B, C, and E, as well as Reservoir 5 as part of this project.
I'll jump in on this one real quick too, if I may. So it is a large increase, $1.6 million additional, but this project is funded almost entirely by impact fees in the water utility. So it's all the new developments that drove the need for this additional tower that's paying for that cost.
Project number 4598 is our water and sewer equipment project, and this was revised. And basically, this is our fleet replacement and some other equipment such as generators that we utilize on the utility side. We're seeing an increase in pickup trucks. So you'll see some of the numbers being revised to $55,200 to reflect the current costs we're seeing for 3/4 ton pickup trucks. And you'll kind of see these changes in yellow on the spreadsheet that was provided for this project. Next up, we have our main oversize and service insulation and hydrant project, and this remains unchanged from our previous year. Next up is our well maintenance project, and this has been revised from the previous year. And basically, we updated some of the costs of our well maintenance projects and also timing of the projects, and we kind of listed those out within the description of this project. Next, we have project 4802 Irish Lane Water Main, which was revised from the previous year. We delayed this project from 2026 to 2027 to coincide with the revised street resurfacing schedule for Irish Lane. And next up, we have our Tower Hill Water Main Replacement Project. And this project remains unchanged from the previous year. And then project number 4805, our customer water meters, was revised from the previous year. And we added the purchase of all meters for new construction and replacements to the CIP for this project. Next up, project 4806, our PLC radios, and this is a new project. PLC is the programmable logic controls, and basically we were informed late in 2022 that our PLCs and radios are obsolete and we need to replace them prior to them failing. So we'll complete this work as part of the Well 12 Tower D improvements to help reduce the costs of replacement. And then last but not least is our AMI meter replacement project. AMI stands for Advanced Metering Infrastructure. And basically our AMI system has seen its useful life and is in need of replacement. So this project captures that, and you'll see in the project description and kind of the years, it's 2031, 2032, and 2033, we're going to start seeing the replacement of the existing system. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
Hearing none, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Very thorough. Yeah.
Any wonder why we needed to add staff and works the last couple of years? I mean,
exactly.
And we could certainly probably use some more.
Yeah, there's definitely not a dull moment or lack of projects going on.
We do appreciate the update and the work of you and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you speaking next, Chad, then to finish?
I think I'm finally up now, so yes.
All right.
Exactly. Excellent. So first project under admin is the 1038, which is the solar investment, looking to utilize potential solar powering for lifts, wells, and pumps. It was revised for this CIP budget year, and that changed grant match funding from levy to TID closure. Project 1042, hybrid and electric vehicles. Gabriella should be happy there's at least no change to it. Maybe she would like an additional amount of money put there, but at least there has been no revision. 1043, general fleet vehicles. No change in that either. And then 1045 is the last one, capital grant match funding. And this is new. And I'll allow Misty to clarify any misspoken statements here, but generally speaking, this would be a situation where we are now going to utilize, basically create seed money, for lack of a better term on my part, from our excess unallocated fund balance over 25% to be utilized for grant matches. Currently, those grant matches often will have to come off the levy, and now we'll at least have some funding available by creation of the CIP account, which will hopefully also encourage more grant applications, knowing that there is now a source for the 20% match. Anything you want to add at all?
The only thing I'd add is that this is a focus on one-time projects. We're using this fund balance amount, so we want to make sure we're very strategic about how we use our fund balance. So for one-time projects, which means it needs to be for capital grants that are received.
Okay. Anything further?
So I do have next steps, if you're willing to jump into that quick.
Yes.
Excellent. So after I'm done, the Finance Committee does need to vote on the resolution that authorizes the CIP. We all understand that we still need to go through the amendment process, so it's not as it stands now, but after all of the amendments are processed and voted upon. So next steps, at the end of the CIP in the appendix, there is the adopted schedule. So tonight was information gathering. In the next few weeks, it's going to go to the Board of Public Works, and it's going to go to the Plan Commission, and this was the Finance Committee. At the next council meeting on the 27th, we have our first public hearing on the CIP. This is the chance for the public to share their thoughts on the mayor's proposal, on what they like or don't like, want to see changed, so that council can consider that as you're deciding what amendments you may want to submit. Amendments are due to me July 5th. I emailed out to all of you the form that I'd like you to use. You really just need to fill out that top box, and I can do the rest of the number stuff. And if there's any way I can help you as you're putting together your amendments, I'm more than happy to assist in whatever way we can. And then same with the other departments. Feel free to reach out to them if you're considering changing one of their projects. I'll make sure that they can help guide you on any things that you should consider as you're putting together those amendments. So those are due July 5th. We'll have those back out onto the website on July 17th. And then July 25th, about a week later, is when we'll have the council meeting. We will have another public hearing. That will be the chance for the public to weigh in on your amendments and what they think about those. And then we'll go amendment by amendment. We can amend the amendment however you want to, as long as it's within that CIP project. We'll go through that. We'll vote on each one. At the end of the list of amendments, we will have a CIP that has now been amended by council. We'll pass the resolution that adopts that CIP, and then we roll right into budget from there. So kind of in the early-ish stages of this, but there's a lot of work that you guys have to do between now and when those amendments are out.
All right. Very good. Anything else to add, though, Misty, before we move on to the next action item?
I don't think so. I'm good.
All right. Very good. We'll move on to item 4, then the next action item, or action items. 4A, do I have a motion to move Resolution R-129-23, adopting the 2024 through 2033 Capital Improvement Plan known as CIP?
I move approval.
Thank you, Alder Gerhart. We do have a motion for approval. Discussion?
I will remind you this is just a Finance Committee vote.
Correct. There, no discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, announcements. There are no announcements. So do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move adjournment.
All right. Motion made by Alder Wheeler for adjournment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. We are officially adjourned at 8:32 p.m. Thank you.